So big oil continues to get rich while everyday people continue to struggle to afford to live. And whether that's putting gas in the car or food in the fridge, people are struggling even to pay their mortgage and their rent. But big oil, the money is still rolling in for them. So oil companies doubling their profit from last year. That's what they're doing. And the companies are ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, and Total Energies. So they're doubling. Meanwhile, working people are still struggling. That is a problem. And how is it that these corporations are making so much money off of other people's misery? Because that's what this comes down to. They live in the good life, they're living the high life, and every other person is struggling. Every other person has less money to go around than they had before. But all of these big corporations, they're not breaking the sweat. They breaking the backs of the workaday people of this nation. That's what they're doing. So how did Shell do this year? They did pretty well. Let's talk about it. Shell, one of the biggest oil companies in the world, posted a $9.5 billion with a B in global third quarter profits, more than double the 4.2 billion it reported during the same period last year. Of course, they'll be buying back $4 billion worth of stock. That's what they're gonna do. So I'm trying to understand this, Jordan. And I want the viewers to understand this too. How is it that in the midst of the pandemic, in the midst of just extreme suffering, on top of the suffering that was already going on before the pandemic, that corporations like Shell and others can double their profits, but meanwhile, in the hoods where people are misunderstood, the suffering continues?
I think it shows just this callous disregard that oil companies and their executives have for working people. And we can get into it in a bit, what is really driving some of these cost increases. In part, it's definitely, but there is an element where it is the Saudis. But on this corporate greed element, Biden has offered, kind of some feeble rhetoric around reining in some of this profiteering, passing on some of these profits back to consumers and working people, and to lower prices. And they really haven't, done anything serious to tackle this, rising gas prices, even though it is now an election, liability for Democrats. But on this notion that they should return profits back to working people, Exxon CEO Darren Woods, and Exxon made $20 billion in quarter three this year. And they, I think doubled their profits from quarter three of last year. And he mocked Biden the day after Biden said that, saying, oh, well, there's some people in Washington and the White House who think we should return our profits back to the working people. That's what we're doing in terms of our shareholder dividends. And so basically saying, hey, if you're an investor, you're great. Shell with these buybacks, huge windfall to their investors. So some people have said, okay, let's have a windfall profits tax.
That's right.
Larry Summers, who was Obama's economic advisor, mocked that idea and said, hey, whoa, if you do that, you're going to limit investments in clean energy. No, they've had ample opportunity to take those profits. I mean, it isn't just this quarter. Up all this year, the biggest seven oil companies this year have brought in around 170 billion in profit, not just total gross revenue. So they've had quarter after quarter after quarter to make any investment in clean energy, to make any investment in lowering costs, and they're not doing it. This isn't Shell's first round of buybacks. They've done it multiple times this year. So they're just giving money back to investors. They're giving their executives bonuses. They're paying themselves. They're keeping the money, and it's breaking the backs of working people. So any idea that this is necessary to some sustainable long-term future is totally bogus.
Yeah, it is. Definitely not their first time to the rodeo. They ride this horse over and over and over again. We're gonna look at the comparisons of those profits. Take a look at a tweet from Greenpeace UK. Shell makes 3.7 million in profit every hour. Yeah, you're reading that right. You are hearing me correctly. $3.7 million in profit every hour. In the UK, 10 people die in poverty every hour. Anyone else find this disgusting? Does anybody else? Do you? I hope that you do. And that is why we need our elected officials to take some action. Where is the stick? Jordan, the federal government has the biggest stick, and they need to use that stick against these oil companies. And not only are they taking advantage of the consumer, they're also destroying our environment as well. So how about Total Industries? They did a pretty good, they had a pretty good profits too. Total Industries reported 9.9 billion in profits, up $4.77 billion compared to the third quarter of 2021. Very clear that these oil companies are not feeling any pain, but they should. And that pain should be coming from the federal government making the crooked paths straight. Government's job is to be the referee, but they're not doing a whole lot of refereeing in this case. Jordan, why do you think that they are allowing these companies just to run amok like this?
I think part of it is also that they can blame production issues, and that there is an element of a production issue because OPEC and OPEC Plus specifically is a cartel. And because of the war in Ukraine, because of Russia's involvement there, and through OPEC Plus, their relationship with the Saudis, they just artificially reduced production. Biden has made repeated asks. I wrote about this in the letter this week. Biden has made repeated asks to the Saudis to increase production. And instead, they not only cut production, they cut it more than what the Russians even asked them to. Like, it caught the Russians by surprise. They cut it by I think 2 million barrels per day, which is that is a colossal reduction. So artificially limiting it is basically not just a middle finger to Biden by the Saudis, but also really does drive up some element of prices. What they charge at the pump isn't necessarily one-to-one tethered to production. I mean, they can profiteer at the pump that way. They can, increase the prices of things inside the gas stations. So all of these things add up, but the oil companies, despite the price of oil per barrel slowly declining, has remained relatively stagnant. It's not the $5 mark that it was in the peak of the summer. It has gone down a little bit, but it's still relatively high. And people like to say, oh, okay, well, they dismiss these record profits as just because we're returning to normal. Well, look back at quarter 3 2021. Things were normal. It's what you want to look at is 2020. People still try to use COVID as an excuse for this profiteering, but like I said, these are record profits. It's not just that they're doubling from last year. They're posting some of their biggest quarters ever. So it is
in history. Yeah, definitely in history. And they're definitely charging more than the cost to do business. Extremely so. So the planet is on fire because of these fools. Your hair should be on fire because of how they are taking advantage of the world, not just the American people, of the world. We all need to unite against this kind of stuff and demand more from our elected leaders, who unfortunately far too many of them are bought off by these owner donors. And we do need that windfall profits tax right now. Right now.